Hello, dear viewers. I'm George from Ireland. I'm in London, in an area called Holland Park, and behind me is the house where Kenneth Grahame lived much of his adult life. So Holland Park is a very swish area, so he was a rather wealthy man through his banking career. But Kenneth Grahame is best known for being the author of Wind in the Willows, that children's classic, and I absolutely adored it when I was about 6, when it was read to me, and I love that Toad of Toad Hall adaptation by A. Milne, and it was an animation when I was little, and the voice of Toad Hall was by David Jason, so I'm absolutely thrilled to that. It's a classic children's tale. I can't recommend it to you warmly enough if you have a little person in your life. So Kenneth Grahame was born in Edinburgh in 1879. His father was an advocate, that's a type of lawyer, equivalent of a barrister in England. And when Kenneth Grahame was 1, his father was appointed sub-sheriff, which is like a junior judge, and they moved to the countryside. But then his mother died when Kenneth Grahame was 5, puerperal fever after giving birth. His father was a dipsomaniac, was incapable of bringing up the children, so he gave them to his brother, sent them down to live with him in Berkshire in England. So they lived in a village called Cookham, and Kenneth Grahame's uncle was a clergyman. So they had a sort of idyllic childhood, roaming the woods and going down to the riverbank, which may have inspired his tales later on. About this blissful sylvan glade and all these adventures on the River Thames, although it's not specifically the Thames in that novel, and seeing those animals, which like frogs and moles and water rats, stoats and weasels and so on, which inhabit that sort of landscape. Anyhow, so he went to St Edward's School in Oxford, quite a notable school, we found it not very long before, and they didn't have formal sports, which is odd because other public schools were dead keen on rugby, football, cricket, so on. They'd just been formalised. The rules of all these have been written down finally. So he pottered about Oxford and was able to indulge his imagination, reading very extensively. Despite his avidity for study, his guardian decided that he could not attend Oxford University, which Kenneth Grahame wanted to, because the cost was prohibitive. So he had to get a job when he was 18. He joined the Bank of England, and he worked sedulously. He rose in that to quite a high position, but he found it deathly dull. And there was a robbery attempt one time where 3 bullets were fired at them. None of them hit him, but as you can imagine, it was rather frightening. So he was able to retire in 1908. People said those were on health grounds. So he was 39 when he retired. Nice. But you can imagine that give you a bit of a fright. But if it really caused you retirement, wouldn't you retire earlier than that? And he had a generous pension. Bear in mind, I mean, a railway clerk was earning about £100 a year at that time, and his pension was something like £700 a year. There is some dispute about just how high it was. So at least 7 times the average wage. Still free to earn more money. So he'd married Elsworth. They had one child born in 1900, whom they nicknamed Mouse. So Mouse was a brainy boy, went to Oxford University, but he committed suicide at the age of 20. And Kenneth Grahame, as you can imagine, felt the grief of this for the rest of his life. Of course, cast a pall over his old age. But suicide was thought to be deeply shameful. He should be buried in consecrated ground. So the coroner lied for him and said that he died of some other cause. So as you can see, his personal life was touched by tragedy so often. Having one child was just unusually few for those days, because he was lucky enough to keep his son out of the First World War, but nevertheless, the boy died. He published a number of other novels which are not so widely known or appreciated, but that's it. So he is this figure of Toad, who's this louche aristocrat with quixotic ideas, who's mischievous, got a fascination with motor cars. They used to call motor cars back then. He's bombastic, self-indulgent, childish, capricious, flighty, all the rest of it. A colourful, somewhat attractive but pathetic character is the one who is the main character in Wind in the Willows. Though, of course, if you're flatulent, it's Wind in the Pillows. And he's got his nemesis. He gets arrested, sent to prison, eating bubble and squeak. What are the other things that happen? Having to dress as a washerwoman to get out. So it's this childlike and delightful image of Edwardian Britain, without the ugly parts of the poverty that many people suffered. Alright, so that is enough about Kenneth Grahame. Please follow me on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, and subscribe to the channel. Request videos from me, choose online lessons with me, and pick me as your tour guide in London. Get me to translate for you for various languages, or to help you with essays, dissertations, and theses. Toodaloo.